Good morning, fifth grade. Welcome to day 2 of your online course. Today we are going to continue reading in the Eyewitness Civil War text, and during our parallel teaching we're going to be looking at slave life. But for the online course, you have a text in your packet that looks like this. It's called Slavery, the Civil War, and Reconstruction. And today's article is about the Underground Railroad. So you don't have to turn to that yet. We're going to do the quick write and the vocabulary first. So track your notes. We already did this part on the quick write. It says write your answers on 2 sticky notes. What do you think you know about slavery in the United States? So you've already done that, and today during our lesson, we want to confirm these ideas or add to these ideas new ideas about slavery. Our focus question for today is, how did slaves live in the United States, and how does the author use text features to communicate his message? Our vocabulary words are economy. That's the consumption, distribution, or trade of goods and services. And so economy has to do with trading like goods or things and services for money. So it has a lot to do with making money. And so you would draw a line to this picture that has the money bags and the smiley face. Our next word is moral. That is relating to what's right and wrong based on what you think is good. So if you are a moral person, you would do the right thing. And so we would draw a line to this picture that shows this person struggling over to make a good decision or a poor decision. And then the last word is abolish. It means to do away with or to formally end an institution. And today the institution we're talking about is slavery. So when we're thinking about the Civil War, people wanted to abolish slavery. You can draw a picture of Abraham Lincoln. It's like a play on words that says abolish slavery because his arm muscles are so big. It's a joke. All right. When you turn the page, you'll be able to see the article. You can just go ahead and tear off that top page so you have the article out beside your notes as you're listening. All right. So the first thing we do when we have a nonfiction text, we know that this is about slavery and the Underground Railroad. Both of those things were real. So we have a nonfiction text. The first thing we're going to do to try to find the main idea of the article is to turn the title into a how or why question. All right, so we have the Underground Railroad. How the Underground Railroad that does not sound right. But we could say, why was the Underground Railroad important? And so we will write that down in the first part of box 1. Why was the Underground Railroad important? You can press pause to write down your answer and play when you are ready to read the article. All right, let's start reading at the top of the article that says the Underground Railroad. And remember, to find the main idea, we are going to underline evidence in the text that answers this question: why was the Underground Railroad important? Let's start reading. The Underground Railroad was not a railroad. It wasn't underground either, but it did help show thousands of black men and women the way from slavery of the South to freedom in the North. So I'm going to underline that sentence because it tells me why it was important. The Underground Railroad helped black men and women who were slaves in the South escape to freedom in the northern United States. Let's keep going. Before the Civil War, it was illegal to help slaves escape because slaves were considered property. However, many people thought slavery was morally wrong. They were willing to put themselves at risk to help slaves escape. The Underground Railroad was the system of men and women who hid slaves in their homes and on their farms as they made their journey to freedom. I'm going to underline that sentence as well because it tells me why it was important. Men and women hid slaves on their homes and farms to help them escape to freedom. Let's keep reading. The stops along the way were called stations, just like the stations on a railroad train. Each house told the fugitives where they would find the next friendly house. And in this case, the fugitives are the runaway slaves because it was against the law for slaves to escape. Therefore, they became fugitives. The railroad was so secret that each station along the way knew only about the house before it and the house after it. That way, no one could tell on the entire system and find out the whole route of the Underground Railroad. Slaves often traveled only by night to avoid capture. Before they reached their first house, the North Star was the only guide to freedom. The stars of the northern night sky looked like they move along the North Star. By following the North Star, slaves could be sure that they were traveling north. The people who helped slaves escape were called conductors. Harriet Tubman was one of the most famous conductors. After she escaped herself, she risked her life again and again to help hundreds of other men and women escape. Harriet Tubman refused to let slaves turn back once they were in her group on the Underground Railroad. White men might capture anyone who left. Then the whole group would be in danger. She would never allow this to happen. Legend says she would pull out a gun and tell the nervous person, "You'll be free or die a slave." No one ever disobeyed her, and they all reached freedom. She was selfless her whole life. During the Civil War, she worked as a nurse and a spy for the Union Army. She would tell Northern generals where the Southern troops were. The gravestone of this truly remarkable woman reads, "Servant of God, well done." All right, so if we're going back to what we underlined for our main idea, we have that, but it helped show thousands of black men and women the way from slavery of the South to freedom in the North, and the Underground Railroad was a system of men and women who hid slaves in their homes and on their farms as they made their journey to freedom. So we can combine these two ideas into one main idea and say that, get ready to write, the Underground Railroad was important because it helped slaves escape to freedom in the North. Press pause to write down your answer and play when you are ready for number 2. Number 2 says, it can be said that Harriet Tubman never lost a passenger. What does that mean? So if we go down to the paragraph that talks about Harriet Tubman, it's paragraph 1, 2, 3, 4. And if we go back and we reread it, we know that it talks about how Harriet Tubman refused to let slaves turn back once they were in her group on the Underground Railroad. And because she never let them turn back, they all reached freedom. So we can go to number 2 and say that because Harriet Tubman never let escaped slaves turn back on the Underground Railroad, everyone reached freedom in the North. Press pause to write down your answer and play when you are ready for number 3. It says, why was it illegal to help runaway slaves? Let me go back in my text. Up at the second paragraph, it says, before the Civil War, it was illegal to help slaves escape because slaves were considered property. And so we could write down our answer for number 3 by saying it was legal to help runaway slaves because slaves were considered property. Press pause to write down your answer and play when you're ready for number 4. It says, how did Harriet risk her life? List 2 ways. So I will need to go back to the paragraph that talks about Harriet Tubman. And we know it says that after she escaped herself, she risked her life again and again to help hundreds of other men and women escape. So the first time Harriet risked her life was when she escaped by herself. The second time she risked her life was when she would go back to the South and help slaves escape to freedom in the North, just like she had done. So we could say Harriet Tubman risked her life. Write this down for number 4. Harriet Tubman risked her life by escaping from slavery and by helping others escape from slavery. Press pause to write down your answer and play when you are ready for the second part of box 4. How did the roll of cotton... Oh, that should not be there. That's, this last box is a question from that you're going to answer in a minute. Okay, so now you are done with box 4. You can go on to the paragraph that says, how did the Underground Railroad affect slavery? You can turn the question around. And we know you need to think, did the Underground Railroad have a positive effect or a negative effect on slavery? And I'm thinking it had a positive effect on slavery because it helped slaves escape from slavery. And then you would need to give evidence from the text that supports the idea that the Underground Railroad help slaves escape from slavery.